Welcome. Today is the Vision Committee meeting, and we're here to talk about or have a water plan. Talking about our water plan, we have Mr. Travis Payne here. Would you? I don't think I know you're the young lady there, diligently looking at her computer. What is your name?
My name is Lillian Tolvey. Lillian Tolvey with JVA.
JVA is a what, consulting company?
Consulting engineering firm. Yes, we've been working on, diligently working this past year on
Diligently.
water conservation plan,
You're
water
gonna-
master plan.
You're going to steal
capital
my
improvement.
word, aren't you? Diligently. Okay, thank you. Would you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Dennehy?
Here.
Councilmember Maloney?
Here.
Councilmember Schmischer?
Here.
Councilmember Stein?
Here.
Councilmember Tracy?
Here.
Councilmember Worthington?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick? Absent. Mayor Troutman?
Here. So I think we should go forward with Travis. Could you start us out, please?
So, as Lillian just said, we've been working on this master plan for quite some time now. This went before the Water Committee last month. They did a very similar presentation, so we included those draft comments on this presentation. This also went to our legal and our water attorney and our water engineer. They provided some comments, so this presentation has included those. We're just about ready to wrap up a draft that we'll be able to send to all council members, so I should have that out to you by the end of this week so you can see the whole document.
And I am going to share my screen and get this presentation lined up.
Perfect. So we'll just kind of, it can be very conversational if it needs to be. If you guys have any questions, just let us know as we go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So again, my name is Lillian Tolvey with JVA. I'm a project manager for this project. Joining me a little bit later at this presentation is Michael Katalinich. He's our principal in charge on the project. He had a conflict this evening, but he will be joining in about half an hour or so. Yeah, so this is our presentation on the Water Master Plan. Little introduction here. Definitely want to go through an overview of our draft plan and the capital improvements plan that we've created. This is our second presentation. As Travis alluded to, we did discuss this with the Water Committee a few weeks ago, but we still want to give this as an opportunity to gain some city and community input. So again, we can keep this a little bit more casual. Please, and there'll be plenty of opportunities to interrupt me if you guys have questions or concerns. Just please ask throughout. So the overall goal of this project was to ensure stability, reliability, and water quality for the city water system. We wanted to ensure that the city is well suited to meet the future growth demands and appropriately financed to achieve the system goals for the next 25 years. The Water Master Plan is an update to the 2006 Master Water Supply Plan for the city that was completed by Martin and Wood Water Consultants, as well as the 2010 Water Utility Tap Fees Report, which was completed by HDR Engineering. The city was actually awarded a grant for this work, a dollar-for-dollar match grant. So it was from the Department of Local Affairs, DOLA, and so they received about half funding from the grant as well as city reserves for the remaining. So Michael, myself, and the rest of my team, as well as our sub-consultant, Ruff Tellis, and the city have been working kind of collaboratively over the last year to complete the master plan, the capital improvement plan, the water conservation plan, and the rate study as well by the end of the year for adoption and approval by the City Council. Oh, I do want to go through an overview of the presentation. Apologies. So overview, we're going to discuss existing conditions first, as well as moving on to future conditions. We're going to discuss the water supply, and then discuss the creation and the calibration, as well as results from the water model. Then we'll go through the condition and performance assessments of the existing infrastructure, and then the capital improvements plan. And we can dive into those projects as much detail or as little detail as you guys would like. Okay, so for existing conditions, this is a aerial overview of the main processes for the treatment system. Kind of blocked by the text there, but the Arkansas River is just kind of running along the south of this picture. And as well as hidden is the low head pump station. We've got the high head pump station next to the A pond, the aux pump station near the ditch diversion point, and then the remainder of the treatment infrastructure, the backwash recycle ponds with drying beds. We've got the 5 million and 3.4 million tanks for contact time, the east and west filtration buildings, the backwash tanks, the old flock basins, and the main process building. So want to step through just a little bit in more detail the process flow schematic for treatment. So there are the two sources for the treatment plant. First source being the main Arkansas stem, and the second being the hydraulic ditch. So the main Arkansas stem is pulled from the low head pump station and goes directly into the A pond, the settling pond. From there, you guys have approval for a copper sulfate addition for algae control. And then the high head pump station pulls the water from that A pond into the plant. Then, then the second source is from the ditch, and that is pulled directly from the aux pump station and straight into the plant. Once we're in the plant, the water gets a dose of chlorine dioxide, alum, and polymer. These chemicals are basically to start the treatment process. We need to form a flock for the flock sed basins. And so the chemicals added basically encourage the small particles to clump together and form larger flock.
Is it okay if we ask questions
Yes,
as we go
absolutely.
along? Did I hear you correctly that with the hydraulic water, it doesn't go through this pond A and through that process? It just goes, it's pumped up to the plant directly, is that right?
Yeah, the second source from the ditch just goes direct
Right.
from the aux pump station directly to the plant.
But it's all river water, right? And so how do we get away from a technical point of view with not having to have it go through that pond? Or is it just,
You want to go?
If you'd like to, yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
the settling pond just is, it's a really handy treatment process for us. So if we have a little bit of turbidity come down from the river, kind of slows down that sudden change to our water treatment plant, so we don't have a kind of a jolt to our chemicals.
Yeah.
Additionally, if the river is really bad, we liked having that settling pond so we can pump out of that, not have the river feed into it. Let anything that's really bad in the river go on by, as far as like a rainstorm or something like that makes it really muddy.
Right.
So we really would want everything to go through that A pond. So what we would look to in the future do is be able to pull from the hydraulic ditch into that pond and then up to the treatment plant. So it's a benefit to us.
okay, so it does perform an important function for river water.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of a mechanical reason that we don't run hydraulic through that right now, is that
Correct.
it? Got it, thanks.
Correct, yeah, it's kind of an initial treatment, another sedimentation basin, essentially,
Right.
yeah. So after that chemical dose of the chlorine dioxide, alum, and polymer, again, that gets mixed within the pipe and sent to the flock basin first. where those, it's kind of agitated and the flocks are encouraged to kind of group together, form bigger particles so that it's easier to filter out. Next, you move on to the sedimentation basins, which are more calmer flow. It's a chance to let the heavy flock kind of settle out to the bottom of the tanks and the clearer water to stay on top. From there, then it goes into filtration. So there are the two buildings, east and west filter buildings, and there's 6 filters in each building. So you have a kind of separate trains. And then from there, after filtration, there's a dose of both chlorine gas and fluoride. You guys have turbidity monitoring for your combined filter effluent. And then the flow is directed to the 5 million gallon tank and the 3.4 million gallon tank in order to get contact time, appropriate disinfection for the water. Then there's a entry point residual monitoring station to confirm you guys have sufficient treatment and it is potable water with enough residual before being directed to the distribution system. So that's kind of the main process flow through the plant from kind of dirty source water to potable finished water. There are 2 side streams as well shown on this schematic. First being the backwash side stream. So finished water is pulled from the 5 million and 3.4 million gallon tanks, runs through the backwash pump station to the backwash tanks, and from there is fed to the filter media filters, in order to backwash and agitate and get all the filtered out solids to settle. So that's the backwash side stream. The other side stream is the solids handling, sludge handling side stream, and the media filters, the SED tanks, and the flock tanks all have the ability to kind of, the sludge is collected from each of those tanks and goes directly to the sludge recovery pond. From there, the solids can be dried in drying beds and sent to a landfill, or the kind of settled water can go back through the process, through the recycle pond, and then back to the A pond.
Sorry, quick
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
As far as physically, the sludge recovery pond is down on the same level as Pond A, or is it up?
It's up above, so it's
Okay.
just maybe 100 feet below the water treatment plant. And so from
Okay.
there, it can,
You
the
can-
solids can go down to the drying bed, and the decanted kind of cleaner water then goes down to the backwash recycle ponds, which are those 2 little ponds at the same level as A pond.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of flows by gravity from the filter buildings, sludge recovery pond, down to the backwash recycle ponds, and then to the A pond.
So if you remember that kind of emergency purchase we had to do to fix a drain line, that was a drain line from the sludge recovery pond to B ponds. That's why that was so important to do in a short amount of time.
You mentioned that it could either be sent, the dried material afterwards could be sent to a landfill. What do we do with our dry leftover stuff?
Yeah, great question. So we test those for heavy metals and radiologicals, and that kind of dictates which landfill it can go to. For the past handful of years, it's gone to Southside landfill. So some of our uranium gets a little bit high for being able to just send it to a local landfill, because what we do is we're condensing all the stuff that's in the river. And so there's, of course, a program through the state that, we have to have it tested appropriately, and that dictates where it goes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to existing conditions with population. So we did a few analysis here. The Canyon City Census County Division of the American Community Survey data showed a population of just over 31,000 people in 2021. That data from 2010 to 2021 is shown in the graph on the right there. You can kind of see there was a pretty significant increase in growth from 2017 to 2021. Important to note here, the city's non-transient and transient population is not included in these numbers. So in collaboration with the city, we kind of agreed that we would be better off using the Colorado Public Health and Environment Public Monitoring Plan data because it shows that transient and non-transient population included, and it also is a bit more in line with the city's TAP growth rate that you guys are seeing. And that population is 34,800 in 2023. So
why does that differ so much from what the federal government or from our census data shows? Because I think it shows us at 17,4 or 5.
Yeah, the difference is that we have a city boundary and then we have a water district boundary. And the population that you're seeing here on the screen is going to be coming from the water district boundary.
Right.
Thank you.
So a little discussion on existing water demand. These numbers are an average based on a few years. So these can fluctuate from year to year. The biggest piece of the pie here is the residential demand, accounts for about 41% of your total. Non-residential is about 37% of the total. Multifamily is about 11% of the total demand. City accounts 6% of the demand. 4% for the 4-mile golf course irrigation, and a mere 1% for group users accounts for the total there.
I'm just going to hop in because I doubt you guys can see when I raise my hand.
I can't.
Yeah, no worries at all. Is group users territorial correctional facility, Southern Peaks, entities like that?
So group users are what we would call consecutive systems, and that is Brookside and Orchard Park. So the entities that you listed out are non-res, so those would be commercials.
Okay. And then multifamily is also not considered residential.
Correct. So that's anything that's duplex or above.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, I didn't see I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand go up. Is it?
I don't think you can when they're doing a presentation. So
Okay.
I was just apologizing for hopping in without being called on.
Oh, no, you just go right ahead.
Yep.
Hop in, hop.
Please feel free to
Thank
interrupt
you.
at any time.
That's so
Amy.
kind of you.
Yeah. One thing to kind of note on this pie chart here is irrigation is also included as kind of a part of each part of the pie. And based on kind of our calculations with the demand, the summer versus the winter, irrigation is about 30 to 40% of the total demand. So moving on to, future conditions for population. So we did use that number from the 2023, the 34,800 for the population. And we did a analysis for 3 different growth rates. One at 0.25%, one at 0.6%, and one at 0.85%. And we did select that mid growth rate, the 0.6%, for the full 25-year planning period. With that, it gives about a population of just over 40,000 people in 2050.
Will you be speaking a little bit more about how you selected that mid-growth rate and why you're projecting the 0.6%?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah, the median growth rate tracks more closely with the census data that we have collected. And it also aligns more closely with the city's tap growth rate that you guys are seeing, especially for residential.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So future average water demand. So this graph shows the build-out demand average at 7.6, just over 7.6 million gallons per day. And then it also shows the low, medium, and high growth rates for the average water demand. The growth rate does include known developments of the Abbey Commons, the Dawson Ranch, and the 4 Mile Ranch. And the build-out demand, that line there, the 7.6, uses the city GIS data and boundaries with assumptions of number of taps per lot based on the zoning.
Sorry, one more question just
Yeah.
about the data backend. Is that are the Dawson 4 Mile and Abbey Commons build outs part of the 0.6% medium average growth rate that you were anticipating, or is that kind of put on top of the 0.6%?
I believe that's included.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead.
Was there a way, or is there a way to kind of try and figure out climate change? Is that included in any of this, as far as perhaps less water and more heat?
That wasn't necessarily included. We have completed a draft of the water conservation plan, which will be, a big step for the city to try to combat those changes in the future. I think we have a presentation coming up in November on that draft. But yeah, it's a little hard to predict. So we kind of just use what we have and kind of project that out based on the info we have. And that's why we kind of selected that 0.6% increase. Okay, moving on to analysis of the existing water supply. So on the right here, we've got the name of the water right and each decreed amount and the max annual diversion. So the water rights in surface water shares totals just over 28,000 acre feet per year. And there are 6 potable water storage tanks in the system, combining for a little over 11 million usable gallons in the system. One thing to note on this total here is it's excluding water rights at Fruitland Ditch, South Canyon Ditch, and I might screw this up. Is it Deweese?
Deweese.
Deweese?
Yep.
Deweese, Dye Ditch, as well as the Fry Arc water storage rights that you have in Pueblo Reservoir.
Could I ask why those were excluded?
I can build it if you want.
Sure,
Yep.
yeah.
So all the ditches, none of those ditches are decreed for municipal use, so we can't use those for drinking water.
That's right.
And then the water that we store in Pueblo Reservoir, that's kind of a one-time emergency use, so we do have 1,000 acre feet stored in the reservoir, but it's not like we have 1,000 acre feet every year. We tend to purchase between 100 and 150 acre feet every year to make up for our evaporation losses that we have in the reservoir, as well as a couple of the contracts that we have through other entities that we provide them augmentation. One of those being South 40. ponds, and then the old Cotter Dam. We have a contract with them that we provide their augmentation with our water that we have stored in the reservoir.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Travis.
Yep.
Could you speak just for a minute about what we use that water for if it's not for municipal drinking water?
Sure. So that is really it was for the land that we have, like the Deweese. This is kind of a parks question, but I'll field it as best as I can. So the Deweese is for the cemetery. That's was supposed to be used for that. We don't have enough water to use the Deweese shares to actually water all the perpetual care ground. And then the South Canyon shares are for Centennial Park, and I believe the same applies, that there is not enough raw water there to be able to water all the ground on the park.
Okay, I have more questions, but perhaps I'll reserve them for Leo and Rex. Thanks.
Okay.
So considering future annual water requirements, this graph shows the current annual water requirement. That is the dashed horizontal line near the bottom there. That is a little trick of the eye, but that is actually a true horizontal constant number shown across the graph. And the remaining lines are the different growth rates, the high, medium, and low growth rates without conservation, and the high, medium, low growth rates with conservation. So we did select the medium growth rate without conservation to be conservative. Again, similarly, that medium growth rate is aligning more closely with the census data and the TAP growth for the community, but we think it's the correct choice to go with. One thing to note on this graph is another trick of the eye. The y-axis there is not scaled to 0. It starts at that 8,500, so kind of looks like when you look at the current line and the medium growth rate without conservation, which is the second highest line there, it does look like it might be, you know, a three times as much for the annual water requirement. But really, with that that scale set at 8,500, it's a little misleading. So it really is only about 20% of an increase in the annual water requirement.
I was just going to address that, where we are with current requirements, annual water requirements at what, about 9,200 or 93, whatever
Yeah,
that current
maybe
is.
92.
So that's in comparison to the total water we have rights to, the little over 28,000 acre feet per year. Is that right? So we're using that portion of that 28,000.
Correct.
And so even with a medium growth rate without conservation, we're not threatening that yet, as I understand it.
That's true. Yes,
Good.
and we'll kind of dive into that in the next slide too. Yeah, good insinuation from the data. So further analysis of your future water supply, this graph kind of shows the 3 growth rates and the build out, the 28,000 acre feet per year diversion, and a 2050 water utilization with and without conservation. So that waterization kind of represents the water projected to be needed in 2050 out of the total annual diversion. And this is showing that at build out, the city is projected to require between 61 and 68% of the available water shares. One thing to note is a little blocked out there, but this does assume average or above average yield conditions. When in a drought year, we may not be able to divert the 28,000. In that instance, the city would need to rely upon emergency water storage and conservation efforts and other best management practices in order to get by.
I would just have, and I probably know the answer, we have storage availability to us that we do store in Pueblo Reservoir. Are there other places that we do? We have other lakes that have that reserved?
We don't, so that's the only storage we have, and so
Right.
I'm sure you heard me talk a little bit about chasing other storage opportunities.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that I'm really trying to get going, so we have more stored water, particularly stored water that we have direct access to in case the river does become polluted for any reason. You know, becomes dirty over an extended amount of time that we can't access that. Nor would the water stored in Pueblo Reservoir help us, because it would be an exchange, so it would be water in the
Right.
Arkansas River. So what's really important to us at this point is having access to stored water as a complete secondary source.
So you're trying to ruin my myth of being here all my life practically, that says we store it in mountain lakes, clear Coors water, we don't have that?
We do not have that.
It's not their water? I'm joking. Will you stop that? You show up in there, you do, so, you lived up there. Keep moving, don't, just keep moving. I'm just
Understood.
kidding.
It's a good segue, though.
Yeah.
It's a
It's a
great
segue,
segue.
yes, I know.
I do
Alright.
have another
Yeah.
question that's kind of related. For those of us who aren't water attorneys, I think that's all of us, but it would be helpful, I don't know if this is listed somewhere or not, but just to maybe more clearly conceptualize what are the various things that can threaten that 28,000 acre feet per year access for us. Drought is one you just mentioned, and, you know, just theoretically, I suppose it could be water wars in water corridor. I don't even know what all would be on the list, but it might be helpful for us to see something like that.
Certainly, the droughts, you know, several years ago with the Hayden Pass fire and the, you know, the burn scar, you know, things like that,
Right,
and
that's a good
contaminations in the river.
That's a real good reminder, because we can have wildfire anywhere up along the river theoretically and threaten it, just contaminate it, rather than just, it's not only just a reduction in supply, but just the quality too. So might be good to help us kind of think through what are all those potential threats, so we don't get too comfortable with the 28,000.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there are additional water storage locations that we have identified to kind of supplement the storage. This map shows a few options that have been proposed as reservoirs to improve that preparedness for emergency water shortages. It might be a little tough to see, but there are 4 reservoirs identified here. The Clear Creek Reservoir, the DeWeiss Reservoir, which is, yep, oh, thank you, on the bottom there, the John Griffin Park Reservoir, and the Oak Creek Reservoir. And based on discussions with the city, the John Griffin Park Reservoir, shown kind of in the city limits there, has been identified as a preferred location.
Sorry, it has a name already. It's just not real, I'm kidding, kind of.
Yeah.
In other words, we don't have a reservoir there yet, but certainly there's been discussion about that potential site.
Yes. Yes, particularly,
But if you don't, I understand the interchangeability of water in Pueblo. That just means that we would get someone and theirs is gonna go on to John Martin or something like that. I understand that. But what if it isn't there? You can have all the water stored in Pueblo. Are we gonna bring it up in trucks or, so, you know what I mean? If it's not in the river, it's not there to exchange
It's not
for
there, yeah.
what we would let go down there.
Yeah, ideally, we would have storage above us that we could just release to ourselves, but that is very expensive.
So when we're contemplating the John Griffin Reservoir, we should have a pumping availability to pump it up. And
For
so,
treatment, yep.
okay. or we could change the name to the Preston Troutman Reservoir. And, no, I'm just kidding. So that would have to be in the mix for that. And I think we've had that discussion.
Yeah, that's kind of a phase 2 to that
Yeah,
that reservoir
okay.
project, have a pump station to bring the water back
Sure.
up to our intake.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, I had to step away for a sec, but that's, the Deweese Reservoir expansion is another thing that we do have our eye on, because that would be discharged into the river just above us.
Yeah.
And in theory, we could have a pipe underneath the river to collect that water before it hits the river,
Yeah.
so it'd also be a true secondary source.
Yeah.
So that's also
And
of
it's not-
interest to us.
It's not a source for us now.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we know, or how much do we know about the time frame for that expansion? at
For the Deweese?
Yeah.
From what I've been told, that is in Deweese's hands right now. They are working with the Upper Ark Conservancy District. Those are the two kind of main entities in that project right now. They have to get a little bit further into feasibility before they start looking for partners for the actual expansion. As far as timeline goes, I don't have a timeline for when the feasibilities might be going.
Right. And partners would be people who want to pay to use that.
You got it. So
I
help
guess.
pay for construction in
Yeah.
order to get some of that storage.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. It's another map here. It's a little busy, but hopefully we can kind of look through these together. Does this show my cursor? No, it doesn't. Okay. I'll try to do my best to kind of point out the spots here, but these are tank storage options. So in the gray circles, which is a little difficult to see, but the gray circles show the existing water storage tanks. We've got 2 at the treatment plant, shown by the star on the left boundary there. We have a 4-mile tank, kind of on the upper right, the northeast part of the boundary. There is also a tank near the Royal Gorge Rodeo, kind of in the center, and then 2 tanks showing locations near the upper and lower Dawson Ranch areas. So those are the 6 tanks that we have currently for storage. What is also shown on this map are proposed tank locations and their appropriate connections. And that is shown by the little smaller blue circles. And they're kind of scattered throughout, but there are leaders showing the appropriate parcel numbers at each of those locations on this map. So there are several that are proposed, kind of based on certain elevations that are gained in these areas. So that's what this map is showing. Any circles? I'll point them out. No problem at all.
We need a pointer.
I probably can't reach the top ones, but right over here I'll start with the existing ones again. There are 2 located over here near the existing treatment plant. The 4-mile ranch tank is up there, little circle. The one near.
Lillian, apologies. I think your microphone might be off. Oh, you're up there.
Oh, that's
why.
right.
Never mind.
Are, near the Royal Gorge Rodeo is this one right here, and then the upper and lower Dawson Ranch tanks are here. And then at each of the parcel leaders is showing a blue circle for potential for future tanks and connections. There's 2 up there as well.
And the purpose of additional tanks would be to maintain sufficient pressure for certain areas of town, or?
Yeah, the main point of tanks is fire protection. So that's a huge point of it, but also, in times where maybe something might go down with the water treatment plant, you have all those reserves to pull from while the treatment train is down. So those are kind of the 2 main reasons why you'd have water tanks.
Exactly.
Yep.
Is that for Orchard Park? Or would
That's a pump station, I believe, North Ninth Pump Station. So. Yes, yeah, so that's not a tank, it's just a pump station. The pump stations are included in this.
With regard to those locations on the, sorry, Andrea, if you're still speaking, I think your mic may be off, so I don't mean to cut you off if you are.
I think she's done.
Oh, awesome. My only question was with regard to the additional the additional tank locations, have we looked into kind of what those parcels actually are? And are we confident that that they would be available to the city, or that we would be able to get easements or what have you? I noticed that it looks like 2 of them may be outside of the existing service area. So just curious as to what thought or what strategy has gone into those locations. Thanks.
Yeah, so those are existing tanks and pump stations that we have easements for already. Yeah, so everything that's shown on this is existing infrastructure that has those easements and access in place.
So it would just be adding additional tanks to where we currently have easements and access?
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. You were asking for when we expand out?
Correct.
Yeah, for the future
Yeah,
water
I'm
storage
sorry.
tanks.
I thought you were asking about the existing. No.
No, I would hope we would have.
Yeah, you might be surprised, but no, we certainly do. We certainly do. For what we have expansion, no, we don't, because we don't have a clear picture of when those areas are going to be expanded, how much of those areas are going to be expanded. So when they are expanded, there's going to need to be engineering put in place to select the correct place for any kind of pump station or tank.
Got it. So these are more notional or kind of ideas at this point?
Yeah.
General ideas.
Correct.
Okay.
Ideas and locations at proper elevations that have potential to be successful tanks.
Travis, it looks like we might be missing the future tank for 4 Mile Ranch on this map.
Thank you.
I think my only concern is if we're identifying specific parcel numbers, those specific parcel numbers likely belong to specific individuals. So it always just concerns me when we are identifying things like that and we haven't actually talked to the specific parcel owners in advance when we're putting it in this kind of document. So we just love to understand kind of how we're planning to do that messaging. Thanks.
Great comment. Thank you.
Yeah, Amy, I think that's a really good comment. Well, it's definitely received. I can take another look at exactly maybe a little bit more detail of these parcel numbers and exactly what kind of ownership is in place already. I think that's a great point.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Oh, bummer, he didn't get it. Okay. Let's move on to a little bit of a discussion of the water model, both the creation of and what kind of results came out of it. So the city had an original water model that was modeled in a software called Water Gems. And what we wanted to do was kind of update this and put it into a newer, more advanced software. So we started with the existing model and transferred it over to a software called InfoWater Pro. Basically, we used the same system network, but we updated a lot of the inputs. So a lot of the the elevations of each node, which is basically every pipe, every junction, all of those elevations were updated. All the pump station information, including pump curves, was input in. A lot of the control details was updated, as well as tank fill and empty levels to more accurately show kind of the pressure drop and rise through the system, as well as all the updated demands that were kind of discussed earlier in this presentation that were developed from the Water Master Plan. Another thing that was updated and calibrated to the model is this diurnal pattern, kind of shown on the right graph here. The gray line is the original model's diurnal pattern. And a diurnal pattern, I can explain, is showing the flow of demand on a 24-hour period, on a daily period. So you can kind of see how there's a peak in the morning and then drops off through the middle of the day, and then another peak at night. So again, the gray is showing the original diurnal pattern that was previously modeled. The blue line is showing a more updated average of that diurnal pattern, and then the orange is the adjusted average that we used as the diurnal pattern for the updated model. So we were able to really tweak things and kind of more accurately show what's happening in the city on a daily basis. Oh. Okay, thank you. So, one thing that came out of all of the calibration and updates to the model is that we still have some unknowns in the system. One main trouble area with as far as the calibration of the model is concerned is the 4-mile development. It's not accurately showing the pressures in the system in that area, and it's not reflecting in the model as what we're seeing in real life. And some of those reasons could be the location of the commercial and irrigation demands maybe aren't shown correctly. When you develop the model, there can be pipes laid over pipes, and it's hard to tell whether they're a true cross where there's connected, or whether it's a line that's just kind of over the top of the other line. There's also a potential for different pipe diameters that might be unresolved, as well as corrosion creating smaller inner diameters of pipes. And another one is potential for partially closed valves. Just old valves in the system, maybe not working properly, and either we couldn't close them all the way or couldn't open them all the way, so they're partially closed in the system, creating some pressure spikes. So we definitely have some homework, as I can call it, for city staff to kind of help us figure out some of these unknowns, and so we can further update the model.
Is that through the whole system or just 4-Mile Ranch? Is there a difference here? I mean, 4-Mile Ranch is fairly new. I mean, is that what you're saying?
The northeastern part of the system, definitely want to take a closer look at what's going on there, as well as the Highway 50 corridor.
Okay.
Travis, I have a question, and I know you don't like to hear this, but I do represent District 1. I have 225 families that do not get city water, but yet we provide water to many, many areas outside. Now, in picture Canyon City 2020, or 4020, whatever, 20-something, they mentioned, the planners that put that together mentioned that we cannot even look at expanding or developing north because of Park Center water. Now, how long are we projecting this into the future, this overall plan?
25 years.
Okay.
Until 2050.
Yep.
All right, 25 years. Every time I talk to anybody, including the excavator who does all the repairs, it's a very fragile system, Park Center. At some point, you're going to have 225 residents of this city that may be in a situation where they're going to need water. And there may be some problems there, because that's what everybody I've ever talked to in the city and outside the city that have dealt with it have told me. So I'm just wondering if we're missing the boat by not looking at the possibility that we may have to serve that part of town. I don't know. And that would require another water tank or a pumping station at some point. But 25 years? And there, we don't know who's going to be, involved with the board or what their plans are 25 years from now, what's going to be happening. It's a ditch company. It's an old ranch ditch company. So I'm just putting that out there. I think it might be to our benefit, because if we can't develop north, that we're missing a boat on a lot of possible property we could be developing. So I know it's a very unpopular thing to say, but I had to put it out there because I do represent those people. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't think it's that I don't want to hear it. It's just a situation or a condition that I just don't have any control over. I don't have any control over Park Center. I can't force them to give us 250 taps or anything like that. And as far as taking over their entire system, I mean, that's so much engineering that goes into that it would be a complete separate study, a complete separate project for us to figure out what that would entail. And I just don't think that was, it would be such a big add-on to this project. I don't think it would be a wise use of funds.
Sorry, Travis, I
No,
didn't mean to
go
cut you off. We also have some, legal hurdles there as well, because they are a statutory, they have a statutory boundary as a water district, and we can't necessarily overstep our authority into their boundary.
So the water model ran 3 different scenarios: an average annual day demand scenario, a summer average day demand scenario, and another summer average day demand scenario, but that took into account the known developments forthcoming: Dawson Ranch, Canyon City Commons, and 4 Mile. I'm not gonna, this is maybe a little bit more detailed information than necessary, so I'll kind of gloss over those things. But those 3 main scenarios were run, and the summer average day demand scenarios, those 2 were kind of looked at for future recommendations. So that summer average day demand scenario, I mentioned that homework that we kind of want the staff to complete, mainly exercising valves and running additional flow testing for the summer to really figure out some of the pressure situations at high demand.
Can I ask a question about that? I know in the previous slide, there was at least one place where it talked about a zone that has low pressure for water for fire fighting, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So I assume we already know some of that, and that those would be, whatever those areas are, area or more than one, that would be priority areas to add tank storage or something. But what can you, I don't know where zone 1 is, so what can you say about that?
I don't have a map of the different zones on this presentation.
Okay.
That will be included in the master plan. We're finalizing our write-up of the water model, the whole water model. So that will be included in the master plan.
I guess the question I have is there something that we need to be addressing in the really near future, current problems around pressure?
Yeah, that's what we're hoping, that the water model will give us that kind of information where certain areas that may have lower pressure than we might like. I mean, to be clear, they don't have low pressure to where, we're not meeting our requirements with the state or anything like that, but,
Right.
Somewhere that we might be able to bolster up some pressures for sure. So it's just kind of The way we've always handled it is through those pump zones. There were residents a handful of years ago that wanted a little bit more pressure in the Dawson area. So, you know, those pressure zones are dictated by closed valves. So we can expand those areas. But what the problem is now you're putting them on a much higher pump zone. And so they're the kind of the low elevation wise of that new pump zone. And so they have super high pressure. They have very, very high pressure. So then they have to put pressure reducing valves on, which can fail and then can blow out water heaters. So it's,
Exactly.
we can give them more pressure, but it's either maybe a little less pressure than they want versus a whole lot of pressure when they're on those tank zones.
I guess my question really is just focus on safety and firefighting, whether there's anything in that category that's
Sure.
of concern right now.
Yeah, and that's what we're kind of hoping the water model will tell us.
Yeah, part of the calibration of the model was inputting all of the fire flow testing that has already been done by the city. So we have all that data input into the model, and it did, you know, based on the results of this model, did trigger some more testing needed, especially in the summer.
I think Michael raised his hand, so I see Travis Payne raised his hand.
Oh, okay. It says Travis Payne.
Well, not sure if my camera's working, and I'll put my hand down in a second, but I think, I don't think that the model has identified any major things that led to immediate recommendations. We definitely have that focus for fire flow and those other things, but as far as I know, we haven't actually identified major issues with the modeling to date. More sort of routine wear and repair and areas to focus on and areas of development.
Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. So that's Michael Katalinich with JVA. He's principal on the project. So thanks, Michael. So considering that existing summer average demand scenario, like I said, after we get the exercising of the valves, a little bit more information on some pipe diameters and open-close valves, as well as that fire flow testing, we can kind of calibrate the model and move on from there. That exercising of valves and kind of pressure investigation that will happen will also kind of help clarify what's needed in that 4-mile development area. So for that development, we want to make sure the model is calibrated appropriately, and then we can kind of recommend a project moving forward. Right now, it is unclear as to what is needed in that area. It could be a large diameter transmission main, it could be a pump station, or another location for a pump station. So definitely increased a lot of what's the word I want to say? Confidence that we have in the system model, just with all the updates that were done. But we do still need to make some more efforts as far as the water model is concerned. Okay, a lot of text on these next 2 slides. These are a summary of our condition and performance assessment that was done on the existing infrastructure of the system. So we took a look at kind of each process area, you know, the raw storage and transmission, all the processes through the treatment plant, the FloxSed areas, and filtration, and then moving on to disinfection, backwash, the solids handling, and as well as your instrumentation and controls. So we kind of just looked, and I'm not going to run through these one by one. It's a little detailed for, I think, this presentation, but overall, just wanted to say this. This is information that we use to create the capital improvement plan projects. We kind of just overviewed each process area took into account, you know, the longevity, all the existing features, whether or not improvements could be made to those areas. So that's what we use to develop our capital projects.
And is there a prioritization process that goes into that also?
Absolutely.
So you've got all of these needs and then you got it.
Yep, absolutely, yes. So that is a good segue into our capital improvement plan summary. So this is purposely small. I'm not expecting you guys to read this or see this. If you do have questions and you want to zoom in, I can open up another file and we can zoom in and look at it. But I'll just kind of discuss what is on this summary, and then we can kind of dive into things if we want to. So this summary shows the 25-year timeline. We broke it up into a near term, a midterm, and a long term. On the left, sequentially, are all the projects listed with a description of what those projects are and a category of what process area the project is located in. Then all of the numbers to the right are the associated dollar amounts to it with the associated years. You can see some of these projects have recurring events. They're more operation and maintenance that need to be done, you know, every 5 years, every 10 years, something like that. So in those instances, those projects are listed with several dollar amounts just because they're recurring events.
What's the time frame we're looking at right there?
This is from 2026 to 2050.
Oh, that's the, oh. Okay.
This is the full 25 years of the plan. So what also is shown here in the third from the left column are 2024 dollars. So we have created cost estimates, detailed cost estimates for each of these projects, and we show the estimates in 2024 dollars, and then with this table here, we inflate 4% per year to the completion date of when these projects are going to occur to create a present worth dollar for when the project will occur. And the bottom row shows the total for each year of the projects, and I will show those in more detail in the next upcoming slides.
That's the reason you didn't make the thing bigger so we could read it, right?
I'll show the numbers on the next slide. No, it's just it's a really good summary of exactly what the city is looking at for the next 25 years. And I wanted to say this is our best guess for the water system and what the system needs over the next 25 years. There is potential for emergencies to happen, anything kind of out, that happens that we can't predict, and those will have to be accounted for when they do happen. This is our prioritization, like I said, near, mid, and far term. That's your job and Travis's job to kind of go through these year by year as each budget comes up and assess that priority as the years go by. Another thing to note is this capital improvement plan summary was provided to our subconsultant Ruff-Tellis, and that is the basis of the rate study. And I believe that presentation is next week. So
To the water committee. Yes.
to the water committee. So these next few slides are showing the short, middle, and long-term summaries. So this slide is showing 2026 to 2030, the higher priority projects. And then the number of projects that we're recommending for each of those years, and a total dollar amount associated with each of those projects for that year.
This,
Could I ask, is this, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
sorry, Amy. Does this include treatment capital as well as distribution capital?
Correct.
Thank you.
One of the things, though, that is not included in here, so we were waiting for the completion of the water model to really encompass how much we should be spending year to year on just replacing aged infrastructure. So the number that's plugged into the CIP right now is kind of what we're doing currently, the 500,000 to 600,000, and just kind of water main replacement as we need type projects. So that could go up based on what the water model indicates.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good
Could I
point.
ask this, oh, please, sorry, go
Amy.
ahead, Lillian.
I was just going to say that Travis is right. There is an unknown based on that water model recommendation. With the staff has to do that homework. We need to recalibrate the model, and then there's a potential for that large transmission main or pump station that may need to be implemented in that 4-mile development. Go ahead, Amy.
Thanks. Is this a pretty, I mean, looking back, Travis, at the past 5 or 6 years, is this level of number of CIPs pretty typical for your department?
The last couple of years, yes. The last 5 to 10, probably not so much. I think I mean, it fluctuates based on, our distribution, capital improvement projects. If we're talking water treatment, usually we have 1 to 2, and distribution can really fluctuate quite a lot depending on, 2A projects, if we have a larger number of smaller projects. So it's kind of tough to answer that question. It's just because we may have a lot of small projects versus a couple of large projects. So
Got it.
maybe the better way to answer that is when you're talking the total dollar amount of total OPC, probably we're more around the 2.2 total capital spending for distribution and treatment. That's probably the closest number, without kind of delving back and giving you a real average.
Okay, and maybe another way to ask it as well is, Lillian, in your firm's experience, are we kind of where we should be, and this is typical in terms of the number of projects that need to be done over the short term? Or would you say that kind of we have some urgent situations that need to be addressed?
I would say the number of projects is pretty typical and is not a major red flag. One comment that came out of the last presentation is we did have one project that was a much larger number. I think it was about $32 million in total. And that was being triggered by the lead and galvanized service line replacement that is going to be required by the state. So we actually did plug that in as one project for 1 year, and we instead broke that out amongst, I think, eight years or so now. So when we did have that in as one lump sum for 1 year, every other year besides that year was more appropriately in the range that Travis mentioned. When we kind of broke that out amongst the 10 years, that's what is kind of triggering some of these totals to be more in the $4 million range for each year.
Thank you. That's really helpful context.
Yeah.
And sorry.
And I know the intention of the city is to pursue grant money for those replacements. And right now, that plug number that we used is a very conservative estimate of number of lines that need to be replaced.
So we have a 10-year window to replace all those lines, so we decided to use 8 years for, make sure we get it done in a good amount of time. We didn't want to use the whole 10-year window to do a replacement when we're talking funding. I think Michael has his.
Yeah, Michael.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. The only other comment would be that just in general, anything that's in the short term is viewed as sort of a higher priority. I wouldn't necessarily say it's an emergency project, but those are the ones that either for whatever reason, regulatory driven, age driven, those are the ones that we foresee as possibly being the emergencies coming sooner, and we want to address them sooner than later. So there's a little bit of that built in inherently into, if we designate as short, medium, or long term, that's our crystal ball of, wow, how soon is this going to become a bigger issue for the.
So this is the near term. Next is the midterm. This is running from 2031 to 2040. There is a little bit of a larger project on the bottom there proposed for 2040. That is a kind of either or scenario. We have a sum of the two projects recommended, but it's more of let me remember, it's an upgrade to the auxiliary pump station or pursuing a different diversion off the ditch. So that is showing the sum of the two projects, but in reality, it's probably going to be an either or situation that you'll pursue. So that is maybe one of the higher numbers shown. And then long-term is running from that 2041 to 2050. And as kind of is appropriate, the number of projects and the dollar amounts associated do kind of decrease over that time.
And these dollars are being shown in 2024 dollars, correct?
These are totals that are shown for the appropriate years that we have listed with the inflation shown. Yeah,
With
exactly.
the inflation?
Correct.
Okay.
Good. Ryan's just trying to figure out when he has to quit. No, I'm kidding.
Let me time it up right. Yeah, that's funny. Any questions on the capital improvement plan? There's 30-something projects here shown. Does anybody have any more specific questions? I'm happy to go into more detail or not.
I'm just curious, since I'm the new one up here, what are we spending on average for capital improvements in these scenarios?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, what do you have in your capital budget, Travis?
Yeah. Give me just a second. I can tell you what we requested for 2025. Or what yeah.
Or an average of the last
Just give us 2024.
three years.
I'm not going to be able to give you an exact amount. I don't have that spreadsheet on this one, but give me just a sec. So we were more around 3.5 for like last year. I think that was a hefty year. So for the past 5, I would say we're probably more around 2, maybe 2.5. Yeah.
Okay, so the numbers we were just looking at, those are totals. These aren't in addition to what you would normally be asking for.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Correct.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, so we're in the neighborhood. There's certainly years that do touch 4, 5, and 6 million and things of that nature. But by and large, we're not looking like we're totally out of whack.
Okay, thanks.
It's really good information. It just seems like it's, just going to provide such good guidance for the city. And it's nice that there's not something in there in one of those years that says you've got to replace your complete plant. I mean, there are worse scenarios I can imagine. And I guess, and I don't, maybe you addressed this and I just missed it, but the treatment capacity of the plant isn't really in question. It's just maintaining, improving, et cetera, that we're talking
That is
about.
correct, yeah.
Which is really nice for 25 years to be
Yeah,
able
we
to
really
say
do.
that.
So that was the number that I will use when she was talking about million gallons per day, because we have our max output of the water treatment plant at current rating is 22 million gallons a day.
22 firm.
22
Yep.
Yep. So that's,
Okay.
although that seven point whatever it was, sorry, 7 and change number was average demand, and we have to be appropriately sized for peak demand. So we wouldn't be using that 7 necessarily, we'd be using the peak demand. Yeah, but to answer your question, yes, we have plenty of capacity in our treatment plant. And a further comment is I was really excited about the CIP because that makes my job a lot easier in that I feel like, I have a pretty good grasp, but it's nice to have backup from an engineering firm to say what needs to be done and an appropriate dollar amount that I should be looking at.
Right.
And there's a range of projects. Some of them are, can be city staff performed, and some of them are requiring a full contract and contractor, and so just wanted to say that. So next steps, I mentioned a couple upcoming presentations. Next week, the Water Committee is presenting, or is being shown a presentation on the water rates and rate study by Raftelis. November 6th is our first kind of reading of the conservation plan and an additional presentation on the water rates. December 2nd is the first reading of the water rate increase. And then December 16th is a pretty big meeting. That'll be adoption of the water master plan, the conservation plan, and the rate study, and the second reading of that water rate increase.
And for the water committee meeting next Wednesday, we are broadcasting that session. It is posted, so if all of council wants to show up to that meeting, you're more than welcome to. We are trying to get information out to the public so that they can see everything that's gone into this, and I don't know that we're making any recommendations at that meeting, just presenting options at this time.
Yeah, presenting a draft rate study for input, so we can kind of, just like meetings like this, we can continue to improve for a final draft.
And that's a 2 p.m. meeting, correct?
Correct, 2 to 4.
2 to 4, next Wednesday, yep. So that's kind of what I had for our presentation today. You guys have any other questions or discussion points you would like to go over?
Any questions from anyone? Discussions? I was going to ask one, but Jerry asked it, so as the new guy, you can't do that. Just kidding. Any questions, anyone? If not, we're going to,
Oh, the only thing I think of is, if you just think in terms, and it's covered in all of this, but you think in terms of what are the potential areas or area of growth. Certainly the Abbey property, which is, I guess, time-wise, is still an unknown as far as how and when that will develop. But that's incorporated into what you've been looking at in terms of what we expect that development to be able to look like in the future. And I mean, anything else that would be really significant would have to be outside of the city, I guess, because we kind of know what's zoned and planned within the city.
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky because, the water district boundary includes a lot of those areas that, are priority annexation areas. So, if those priority annexation areas develop a little bit differently, they more than likely they should develop according to the comprehensive plan. And I believe that our water consultants have already taken some of that into consideration.
Got it.
okay, any more questions? If not, we're going to adjourn. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks. Questions, and thanks to Travis for taking care of most of the difficult ones. Appreciate it.
Thank you.